testing this out. I'm stuck at a car dealership. Been a busy couple of days. That's why I didn't get to do my live stream yesterday. Not even sure if you can hear me right now. I'm waiting on a text message from Crystal. Testing. Can you hear me, Crystal? I meant to have my microphone with me, but somehow it fell out of my backpack on the way here, and it's been a busy couple of days. So I'm at a Ferguson dealership waiting on the tires to get rotated and the oil change to work. And it seems like I can be heard now. I'll go ahead and get started. We're in Genesis chapter 15. The Lord's promise to Abram. Later, the Lord spoke to Abram in a vision. Abram, don't be afraid. I will protect you and reward you greatly. But Abram answered, Lord all-powerful, you have given me everything I could ask for except children, and when I die, Eliezer of Damascus will get all I own. You have not given me any children, and this servant of mine will inherit everything. The Lord replied, No, he won't. You will have a son of your own, and everything you have will be his. Then the Lord took Abram outside and said, Look at the sky and see if you can count the stars. That's how many descendants you will have. Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord was pleased with him. The Lord makes another promise to Abram. The Lord said to Abram, I brought you here from Ur to Chaldea, and I gave you this land. Abram asked, Lord God, how can I know the land will be mine? Then the Lord told him, Bring me a 3-year-old cow, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a dove, and a young pigeon. Abram obeyed the Lord. Then he cut the animals in half and laid 2 halves of each animal opposite each other on the ground. But he did not cut the doves and pigeons in half. And when birds came down to eat the animals, Abram chased them away. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and everything became dark and frightening. Then the Lord said, Abram, you will live to an old age and die in peace. But I solemnly promise that your descendants will live as foreigners in a land that doesn't belong to them. They will be forced into slavery and abused 400 years. But I will terribly punish the nation that enslaves them, and they will leave with many possessions. 4 generations later, your descendants will return here and take this land, because only then will the people who live here be so sinful that they deserve to be punished. Sometime after sunset, when it was very dark, a smoking cooking pot and a flaming fire went between the 2 halves of each animal. At that time, the Lord made an agreement with Abram and told him, I will give your descendants the land east of the Shihor River on the border of Egypt, as far as the Euphrates River. They will possess the land of Kenites, the Kezanites, the Kenizzites, and Cadmonites, the Hittites, and the Perizzites, the Raphites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. Hagar and Ishmael, chapter 16. Abram's wife Sarai had not been able to have any children, but she owned a young Egyptian slave woman named Hagar. And Sarah said to Abram, The Lord has not given me any children. Abram agreed, and Sarai gave him Hagar to be his wife. This happened after Abram had lived in the land of Canaan for 10 years. Later, when Hagar knew she was going to have a baby, she became proud and was hateful to Sarai. Then Sarai said to Abram, "It's all your fault. I gave you my slave woman, but she has been hateful to me ever since she found out she was pregnant. You have done me wrong, and you will have to answer to the Lord for this." Abram said, "All right, she's your slave, and you can do whatever you want with her." But Sarai began treating Hagar so harshly that she ran away. Hagar stopped to rest at a spring in the desert on the road to Shur. While she was there, the angel of the Lord came to her and asked, "Hagar, where have you come from? Where are you going?" She answered, "I'm running away from Sarai, my owner." The angel said, "Go back to Sarai and be her slave. I will give you a son who will be called Ishmael, because I have heard your cry for help. And later I will give you so many descendants that no one will be able to count them all. But your son will live far from his relatives. He will be like a wild donkey, fighting everyone, and everyone fighting him." Hagar thought, "Have I really seen God and lived to tell about it?" So from then on, she called him, "The God who sees me." That's why people call the well between Kadesh and Bered the well of the living one who sees me. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar gave birth to their son, and he named him Ishmael. Chapter 17, God's promise to Abraham. Abram was 99 years old when the Lord appeared to him again and said, "I am God all-powerful. If you obey me and always do right, I will keep my solemn promise to you and give you more descendants than can be counted." Abram bowed with his face to the ground, and God said, "I promise that you will be the father of many nations. That's why I now change your name from Abram to Abraham. I will give you a lot of descendants, and in the future they will become great nations. Some of them will even be kings. I will always keep the promise I have made to you and your descendants, because I am your God and their God. I will give you and them land in which you are now a foreigner. I will give you the whole land of Canaan to your family forever, and I will be their God. Abraham, you and all future members of your family must promise to obey me. As a sign that you are keeping this promise, you must circumcise every man and boy in your family. From now on, your family must circumcise every baby boy when he is 8 days old. You must even circumcise any man or boy you have as a slave, both those born in your homes and those you buy from foreigners. This will be a sign that my promise to you will last forever. Any man who isn't circumcised hasn't kept his promise to me and cannot be one of my people. Abraham, your wife's name will now be Sarah instead of Sarai. I will bless her, and you will have a son by her, and she will become the mother of nations, and some of her descendants will even be kings." Abraham bowed with his face to the ground and thought, "I am almost 100 years old. How can I become a father? And Sarah is 90. How can she have a child?" She started laughing. Then he asked God, "Why not let Ishmael inherit what you have promised me?" But God answered, "No, you and Sarah will have a son. His name will be Isaac, and I will make an everlasting promise to him and his descendants. I have heard what you asked me to do for Ishmael, and so I will also bless him with many descendants. He will be the father of 12 princes, and I will make his family a great nation. But your son Isaac will be born this time next year, and the promise I am making to you and your family will be for him and his descendants forever." God finished speaking to Abraham and then left. On that same day, Abraham obeyed God by circumcising Ishmael. Abraham was also circumcised, and so were all the men and boys in his household, including his servants and his slaves. He was 99 years old at the time, and his son Ishmael was 13. The Lord promises Abraham a son. Chapter 18. One hot summer afternoon, Abraham was sitting by the entrance to his tent near the sacred trees of Mamre. When the Lord appeared to him, Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. He quickly ran to meet them, bowed with his face to the ground, and said, "Please come to my home where I can serve you. I'll have some water brought so you can wash your feet. Then you can rest under the tree. Let me get some food to give you strength before you leave. I will be honored to serve you." "Thank you very much," they answered. "We accept your offer." Abraham quickly went to his tent and said to Sarah, "Hurry, get a large sack of flour and make some bread." After saying this, he rushed off to his herd of cattle and picked out one of the best calves, which his servant quickly prepared. He then served his guests some yogurt and milk together with the meat. While they were eating, he stood near them under the trees, and they asked, "Where is your wife Sarah?" "She's right here in the tent," Abraham answered. One of the guests was the Lord, and he said, "I'll come back about this time next year, and when I do, Sarah will already have a son." Sarah was behind Abraham, listening at the entrance to the tent. Abraham and Sarah were very old, and Sarah was well past the age for having children. So she laughed and said to herself, "Now that I am worn out and my husband is old, will I really know such happiness?" The Lord asked Abraham, "Why does Sarah laugh? Does she doubt that she can have a child in her old age? I'm the Lord. There is nothing too difficult for me. I'll come back next year at the time I promised, and Sarah will already have a son." Sarah was so frightened that she lied and said, "I didn't laugh." "Yes, you did," he answered. Abraham prays for Sodom. When the 3 men got ready to leave, they looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham walked part of the way with them. The Lord said to himself, "I should tell Abraham what I'm going to do, since his family will become a great and powerful nation that will be a blessing to all other nations on earth. I've chosen him to teach his family to obey me forever and to do what is right and fair. Then I will give Abraham many descendants, just as I promised." The Lord said, "Abraham, I have heard that the people of Sodom and Gomorrah are doing all kinds of evil things. Now I'm going down to see for myself if those people really are that bad. If they aren't, I want to know about it." The men turned and started towards Sodom, but the Lord stayed with Abraham, who asked, "Lord, when you destroy the evil people, are you also going to destroy those who are good? Wouldn't you spare the city if there were only 50 good people in it? You surely wouldn't let them be killed when you destroy the evil ones. You are the judge of all the earth, and you do what is right." The Lord replied, "If I find 50 good people in Sodom, I will give the city to keep them from being killed. I will save the city to keep them from being killed." Abraham answered, "I am nothing more than the dust of the earth. Please forgive me, Lord, for daring to speak to you like this. But suppose there are only 45 good people in Sodom. Would you still wipe out the whole city?" "If I find 45 good people," the Lord replied, "I won't destroy the city." "Suppose there are just 40 good people," Abraham said. "Even for them, I won't destroy the city." Abraham said, "Please don't be an angry Lord if I ask you what you will do if there are only 30 good people." "If I find 30, the Lord replied, "I still won't destroy it." Then Abraham said, "I don't have any right to ask you, Lord, but what would you do if you only find 20? Because of them, I wouldn't destroy the city," the Lord answered. Finally, Abraham said, "Please don't get angry, Lord, if I speak just once more. Suppose you only find 10 good people there." For the sake of 10 good people, the Lord told him, "I still won't destroy the city." After speaking with Abram, the Lord left, and Abram went back home. The evil city of Sodom, chapter 19. That evening, the 2 angels arrived in Sodom. while Lot was sitting near the city gate. When Lot saw them, he got up, bowed down low, and said, "Gentlemen, I am your servant. Please come to my home. You can wash your feet, spend the night, and be on your way in the morning." They told him, "No, we'll spend the night in the city square." But Lot kept insisting until they finally agreed and went home with him. He baked some bread, cooked a meal, and they ate. Before Lot and his guests could go to bed, every man in Sodom, young and old, came and stood outside his house and started shouting, "Where are your visitors? Send them out so we can have sex with them." Lot went outside and shut the door behind him. Then he said, "Friends, please don't do such a terrible thing. I have 2 daughters who have never been married. I'll bring them out, and you can do what you want with them. But don't harm these men. They are guests in my home." "Don't get in our way," the crowd answered. "You're an outsider. What right do you have to order us around? We'll do worse things to you than we're going to do to them." The crowd kept arguing with Lot. Finally, they rushed toward the door, breaking it down. But the 2 angels in the house reached out and pulled Lot safely inside. Then they struck everyone in the crowd blind, and none of them could even find the door. The 2 angels said to Lot, "The Lord has heard many terrible..." The crowd kept arguing with Lot. Finally, they rushed toward the door to break it down, but the 2 angels in the house reached out and pulled Lot safely inside. Then they struck everyone in the crowd blind, and none of them could even find the door. The 2 angels said to Lot, "The Lord has heard many terrible things about the people of Sodom, and he has sent us here to destroy the city. Take your family and leave. Take every relative you have in the city, as well as the men your daughters are going to marry." Lot went to the men who were engaged to his daughters and said, "Hurry, get out of here. The Lord is going to destroy this city." But they thought he was joking, and they laughed at him. Early the next morning, the 2 angels tried to make Lot hurry and leave. They said, "Take your wife and your 2 daughters and get out of here as fast as you can. If you don't, every one of you will be killed when the Lord destroys the city." At first, Lot just stood there, but the Lord wanted to save him. So the angels took Lot, his wife, and his 2 daughters by the hand and led him out of the city. When they were outside, one of the angels said, "Run for your lives. Don't even look back, and don't stop in the valley. Run to the hills where you will be safe." Lot answered, "You have done us a great favor, sir. You have saved our lives. But please don't make us go to the hills. That's too far away. The city will be destroyed before we can get there, and we will be killed when it happens. There's a town near here. It's only a small place, but my family and I will be safe if you let us go there." "All right, go there," he answered. "I won't destroy that town. Hurry, run. I can't do anything until you're safely there." The town was later called Zoar, because Lot had said it was small. Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed. The sun was coming up as Lot reached the town of Zoar, and the Lord sent burning sulfur down like rain on Sodom and Gomorrah. He destroyed those cities and everyone who lived in them, as well as their land and the trees and grass that grew there. On the way, Lot's wife looked back and was turned into a block of salt. That same morning, Abraham got up and went to the place where he had stood and spoken to the Lord. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah and saw smoke rising from all over the land. It was like a flaming furnace. When God destroyed the cities of the valley where Lot lived, he remembered his promise to Abraham and saved Lot from the terrible destruction. Moab and Ammon. Lot was afraid to stay on in Zoar, so he took his 2 daughters and moved to a cave in the hill country. One day, his older daughter said to her sister, "Our father is old, and there are no men anywhere for us to marry. Let's get our father drunk. Then we can sleep with him and have children." That night, they got their father drunk, and the older daughter got in bed with him, but he was too drunk even to know she was there. The next day, the older daughter said to her sister, "I slept with my father last night. We'll get him drunk again tonight so he can go to bed with him, so you can go to bed with him, and we can each have a child." That night, they got their father drunk, and this time the young sister slept with him. But once again, he was too drunk to even know she was there. That's how Lot's two daughters had their children. The older daughter named her son Moab, and he is the ancestor of Moabites. The younger daughter named her son Ben-Ammi, and he is the ancestor of the Ammonites. Abraham and Sarah at Gerar, chapter 20. Abraham moved to the southern desert, where he settled between Kadesh and Shur. Later, he went to Gerar, and while there, he told everyone that his wife Sarah was his sister. So King Abimelech and Gerar and Sarah brought to him. But God came to Abimelech in a dream and said, "You have taken a married woman, and for this you will die." Abimelech said to the Lord, "Don't kill me. I haven't slept with Sarah. Didn't they say they were brother and sister? I am completely innocent." God spoke to Abimelech in another dream and said, "I know you're innocent. That's why I kept you from sleeping with Sarah and doing anything wrong. Her husband is a prophet. Let her go back to him, and his prayers will save you from death. But if you don't return her, you and all your people will die." Early the next morning, Abimelech sent for his officials, and when he told them what had happened, they were frightened. Abimelech then called in Abraham and said, "Look what you've done to us. What have I ever done to you? Why did you make me and my nation guilty of such a terrible sin? What were you thinking when you did this?" Abraham answered, "I did it because I didn't think any of you respected God, and so I was sure that someone would kill me to get my wife. Besides, she is my half-sister. We have the same father, but different mothers. When God made us leave my father's home and start wandering, I told her, 'If you really love me, you will tell everyone that I'm your brother.'" Abimelech gave Abraham some sheep, cattle, and slaves. He sent Sarah back and told Abraham that he could settle anywhere in his country. Then he said to Sarah, "I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver as proof to everyone that you have done nothing wrong." Meanwhile, God had kept Abimelech's wife and slaves from having children. But Abraham prayed, and God let them start having children again. Sarah has a son, chapter 21. The Lord was good to Sarah and kept his promise. Although Abraham was very old, Sarah had a son exactly at the same time God had said. Abraham named his son Isaac, and when the boy was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him, just as the Lord had commanded. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born, and Sarah said, "God has made me laugh. Now everyone will laugh with me." Who would have dared to tell Abraham that someday I would have a child? But in his old age, I have given him a son. Sorry. Start 21. Sarah has a son. The Lord was good to Sarah and kept his promise. Although Abraham was very old, Sarah had a son exactly at the time God had said. Abraham named his son Isaac. And when the boy was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him, just as the Lord had commanded. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born, and Sarah said, "God has made me laugh. Now everyone will laugh with me." Who would have dared to tell Abraham that someday I would have a child? But in his old age, I have given him a son. The time came when Sarah no longer had to nurse Isaac, and on that day, Abraham gave a big feast. Hagar and Ishmael are sent away. One day, Sarah noticed Hagar's son Ishmael playing, and she said to Abraham, "Get rid of that Egyptian slave woman and her son. I don't want him to inherit anything. It should all go to my son." Abraham was worried about Ishmael, but God said, "Abraham, don't worry about your slave woman and the boy. Just do what Sarah tells you. Isaac will inherit your family name, but the son of your slave woman is also your son, and I will make his descendants into a great nation." Early the next morning, Abraham gave Hagar an animal skin full of water and some bread. Then he put the boy on her shoulder and sent them away. They wandered around the desert near Beersheba. And after they had run out of water, Hagar put her son under a bush. Then she sat down a long way off, because she could not bear to watch him die. and she cried bitterly. When God heard the boy crying, the angel of God called out to Hagar from heaven and said, Hagar, why are you worried? Don't be afraid. I've heard your son crying. Help him up and hold his hand, because I will make him the father of a great nation. Then God let her see a well. She went to the well and filled the skin with water, and then gave some to her son. God blessed Ishmael, and as the boy grew older, he became an expert with his bow and arrows. He lived in the Paran desert, and his mother chose an Egyptian woman for him to marry. A peace treaty. About this time, Abimelech and his army commander, Phicol, said to Abraham, God bless everything you do. Now, I want you to promise in the name of God that you will always be loyal to me and my descendants, just as I've always been loyal to you in this land, where you have lived as a foreigner. And so Abraham promised. One day, Abraham told Abimelech, some of your servants have taken over one of my wells. This is the first I've heard about it, Abimelech replied. Why haven't you said something before? I don't have any idea who did it. Abraham gave Abimelech some sheep and cattle, and then the two men made a peace treaty. Abraham separated 7 female lambs from his flock of sheep, and Abimelech asked, Why have you done this? Abraham told him, I want you to accept those 7 lambs as proof that I dug this well. So they call the place Beersheba, because they made a treaty there. When the treaty was completed, Abimelech and his army commander, Phicol, went back to the land of Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and worshiped the eternal Lord God. Then Abraham lived a long time as a foreigner in the land of those are good because you can refill them. They got the big cap. The Lord tells Abraham to offer Isaac as a sacrifice. 22. Some years later, God decided to test Abraham, so he spoke to him. Abraham answered, Here I am, Lord. The Lord said, Go get Isaac, your only son, the one you dearly love. Take him to the land of Moriah, and I will show you a mountain where you must sacrifice him to me on the fires of an altar. So Abraham got up early the next morning and chopped wood for the fire. He put a saddle on his donkey and left with Isaac and 2 servants for the place where God had told him to go. 3 days later, Abraham looked off in the distance and saw the place. He told his servants, Stay here with the donkey while my son and I go over there to worship. We will come back. Abraham put the wood on Isaac's shoulder, but he carried the hot coals and the knife. As the 2 of them walked along, Isaac said, Father, we have the coals and the wood, but where is the lamb for the sacrifice? My son Abraham answered, God will provide the lamb. The 2 of them walked on, and when they reached the place that God had told them about, Abraham built an altar and placed the wood on it. Next, he tied up his son and put him on the wood. He then took the knife and got ready to kill his son. But the Lord's angel shouted out from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Here I am, he answered. Don't hurt the boy or harm him in any way, the angel said. Now, I know that you truly obey God because you were willing to offer him for your only son. You were willing to offer him your only son. Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in the bushes. So he took the ram and sacrificed it in place of his son. Abraham named that place, The Lord Will Provide. And even now, people say, On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. The Lord's angel called out from heaven a second time. You were willing to offer the Lord your only son, and so he makes you this solemn promise. I will bless you and give you such a large family that someday your descendants will be numerous, more numerous than the stars in the sky or the grains of sand along the beach. They will defeat their enemies and take over the cities where their enemies live. You have obeyed me, and so you and your descendants will be a blessing to all nations on earth. Abraham and Isaac went back to the servants who had come with him, and they returned to Abraham's home in Beersheba. The children of Nahor. Abraham's brother Nahor, who had married Milcah, and Abraham was later told that they had 8 sons. Uz was their firstborn, Buz was the next, and then there was Kemuel, who became the father of Aram. Their other 5 sons were Shesed, Hazul, Pildash, Jidlap, and Bethuel, who became the father of Rebekah. Nahor, who had another wife, her name was Rumah, and she had 4 sons, Tabah, Gaham, Tahash, and Makkah. Sarah's death and burial. Chapter 23. When Sarah was 127 years old, she died in Kiriath Arba, better known as Hebron, in the land of Canaan. After Abraham had mourned for her, he went to the Hittites and said, I live as a foreigner in your land, and I don't own any property where I can bury my wife. Please let me buy a piece of land. Sir, they answered, you are an important man. Choose the best place to bury your wife. None of us would refuse you a resting place for your dead. Abraham bowed down and replied, if you are willing to let me bury my wife here, please ask Zohar's son, my wife. If you are willing to let me bury my wife here, please ask Zohar's son, Ephron, to sell me Machpelah cave at the end of his field. I'll pay what it's worth, and all of you can be witnesses. Ephron was sitting there near the city gate when Abraham made his request, and he answered, Sir, the whole field, including the cave, is yours. With my own people as witnesses, I freely give it to you as a burial place for your dead. Once again, Abraham bowed down and said to Ephron, in front of these witnesses, I offer you the full price so I can bury my wife. Please accept my offer. But sir, the man replied, the property is worth only 400 pieces of silver. Why should we haggle over such a small amount? Take the land, it's yours. Abraham accepted Ephron's offer and paid him the 400 pieces of silver in front of everyone at the city gate. How Abraham got Ephron's property east of Hebron, which included the field with all of its trees, as well as Machpelah cave at the end of the field. So Abraham buried his wife in Machpelah cave that was in the field he had bought from the Hittites. A wife for Isaac. Chapter 24. Abraham was now a very old man. The Lord had made him rich, and he was successful in everything he did. One day, Abraham called his most trusted servant and said to him, solemnly promise me in the name of the Lord, who rules heaven and earth, that you won't choose a wife for my son Isaac from the people here in the land of Canaan. Instead, go back to the land where I was born and find a wife for him from among my relatives. But the servant asked, what if the young woman I choose refuses to leave home and come here with me? Should I send Isaac there to look for a wife? No, Abraham answered, don't ever do that, no matter what. The Lord who rules heaven brought me here from the land where I was born and promised that he would give this land to my descendants forever. When you go back there, the Lord will send his angel ahead of you to help you find a wife for my son. If the woman refuses to come along, you don't have to keep this promise, but don't ever take my son back there. So the servant gave Abraham his word that he would do everything he had been told to do. Soon after that, the servant loaded 10 of Abraham's camels and valuable gifts. Then he set out for the city in northern Syria, where Abraham's brother Nahor lived. When he got there, he let the camels rest near the well outside the city. It was late afternoon, the time when the women came out for water. The servant prayed, you, Lord, are the God my master Abraham worships. Please keep your promise to him and let me find a wife for Isaac today. The young women of the city will soon come to this well for water, and I'll ask one of them for a drink. If she gives me a drink and then offers to get some water for my camels, I'll know she is the one you have chosen and that you have kept your promise to my master. While he was still praying, a beautiful unmarried young woman came by with a water jar on her shoulder. She was Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Abraham's brother Nahor, and his wife Milcah. Rebekah walked past Abraham's servant, then went over to the well and filled her water jar. When she started back, Abraham's servant ran to her and said, "Please let me have a drink of water." "I'll be glad to," she answered. Then she quickly took the jar from her shoulder and held it while he drank. After he had finished, she said, "Now, I'll give your camels all the water they want." She quickly poured out water for them, and she kept going back for more, until his camels had drunk all they wanted. Abraham's servant did not say a word, but he watched everything Rebekah did, because she wanted to know for certain if this was the woman the Lord had chosen. The servant had brought along an expensive gold ring and 2 large gold bracelets. When Rebekah had finished bringing the water, he gave her the ring for her nose and the bracelets for her arms. Then he said, "Please tell me who your father is. Does he have room in this house for me and my men to spend the night?" She answered, "My father is Bethuel, the son of Nahor, and Milcah. We have a place where you and your men can stay, and we also have enough straw and feed for your camels." Then the servant bowed his head and prayed, "I thank you, Lord God, of my master Abraham. You have led me to his relatives and kept your promise to him." Rebekah ran straight home and told her family everything. Her brother Laban heard her tell what the servant had said, and he saw the ring and bracelet she was wearing. So Laban ran out to Abraham's servant, who was standing by his camels at the well. Then Laban said, "The Lord has brought you safely here. Come home with me. There is no need for you to keep on standing outside. I have a room ready for you in your house, and there's also a place for your camels." Abraham's servant went home with Laban, where Laban's servant unloaded his camels and gave him straw and feed. Then they brought water into the house, so Abraham's servant and his men could wash their feet. After that, they brought in food, but the servant said, "Before I eat, I must tell you why I have come." "Go ahead and tell us," Laban answered. The servant explained, "I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has been good to my master and has made him very rich. He has given him many sheep, goats, cattle, camels, and donkeys, as well as a lot of silver and gold, and many slaves. Sarah, my master's wife, didn't have any children until she was very old. Then she had a son, and my master has given him everything. I solemnly promised my master that I would do what he said, and he told me, 'Don't choose a wife for my son from the women in this land of Canaan. Instead, go back to the land where I was born and find a wife for my son from among my relatives.' I asked my master, 'What if the young woman refuses to come with me?' The master answered, 'I have always obeyed the Lord, and he will send his angel to help you find my son a wife from among my own relatives. But if they refuse to let her come back with you, then they are freed from your promise.' When I came to the well today, I silently prayed, 'You, Lord, are the God my master Abraham worships. So please lead me to a wife for his son. While I am here at the well, when a young woman comes out to drink water, I'll ask her to give me a drink. If she gives me a drink and offers to get some water for my camels, I'll know she is the one you have chosen.' Even before I had finished praying, Rebekah came by with a water jar on her shoulder. When she had filled the jar, I asked her for a drink. She quickly lowered the jar from her shoulder and said, 'Have a drink. Then I'll get water for your camels.' So I drank, and after that, she got some water for my camels. I asked her who her father was, and she answered, 'My father is Bethuel, the son of Nahor, and Milcah.' Right away, I put the ring in her nose and the bracelets on her arms. Then I bowed my head and gave thanks to the God my master Abraham worships. The Lord had led me straight to my master's relatives, and I had found a wife for his son. Now please, tell me if you are willing to do the right thing for my master. Will you treat him fairly, or do I have to look for another young woman? Laban and Bethuel answered, The Lord has done this. We have no choice in the matter. Take Rebekah with you. She can marry your master's son, just as the Lord has said. Abraham's servant bowed down and thanked the Lord. Then he gave clothing as well as silver and gold jewelry. To Rebekah he also gave expensive gifts, to her brother and her mother. Abraham's servant and the men with him ate and drank, then spent the night there. The next morning they got up, and the servant told Rebekah's mother and brother, I would like to go back to my master now. Let Rebekah stay with us for a week or 10 days, they answered. Then she may go. But he said, Don't make me stay any longer. The Lord has already helped me find a wife for my master's son. Now let us return. They answered, Let's ask Rebekah what she wants to do. They called her and asked, Are you willing to leave with this man right now? Yes, she answered. So they agreed to let Rebekah, an old family servant woman, leave immediately with Abraham's servant and his men. They gave Rebekah their blessing and said, We pray that God will give you many children and grandchildren, and that he will help them defeat their enemies. Afterwards, Rebekah and the young women who were to travel with her prepared to leave. Then they got on camels and left with Abraham's servant and his men. At that time, Isaac was living in the southern part of Canaan, near a place called the Well of the Living One, who sees me. One evening he was walking out in the fields when suddenly he saw a group of people approaching on camels, so he started toward them. Rebekah saw him coming. She got down from her camel and asked, Who is that man? He is the master Isaac. The servant answered, I don't mind, but you're on the internet right now. He is my master Isaac. The servant answered. Then Rebekah covered her face with her veil. The servant told Isaac nothing that had happened. Isaac took Rebekah into the tent where his mother had lived before she died, and Rebekah became his wife. He loved her and was comforted over the loss of his mother. Abraham marries Keturah, 25. Abraham married Keturah. I don't mind at all, but I just wanted to let you know I'm doing a live stream, so you're on the internet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, I don't want to bother you either. So.
Chapter 25. Abraham married Keturah, and they had 6 sons, Zimron, Joshon, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Later, Jokshan became father of Sheba and Dedan, and when Dedan grew up, he had 3 sons, Asherim, Lethushim, and Leumim. Midian also had 5 sons, Ephah, Epher, Hanok, Abida, and Eldah. While Abraham was still alive, he gave gifts to the son of Hagar and Keturah. He also sent their sons to live in the east, far from his son Isaac. And when Abraham died, he left everything to Isaac. The death of Abraham. Abraham died at the ripe old age of 175. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him east of Hebron, in Machpelah cave, that was part of the field Abraham had bought from Ephron, son of Zohar the Hittite. Abraham was buried there beside his wife Sarah. God blessed Isaac after this, and Isaac moved to a place called the Well of the Living One who sees me. Sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do. We got trapped here today, I'm sorry. Ishmael's descendants. Ishmael was the son of Abraham and Hagar, the slave woman of Sarah. Ishmael had 12 sons in his order: Neboith, Kedar, Abdil, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jatur, Naphish, and Kedemah. Each of Ishmael's sons was a tribal chief, and a village was named after each of them. Ishmael had settled on the land east of his brothers, and his sons settled everywhere, and Havilah to Shur, east of Egypt, on the way to Ashur. Ishmael was 137 when he died. The birth of Esau and Jacob. I hope I didn't make that guy sad. I feel bad. I'm trying to be as much over into the corner out of the way of everybody as I can in my own little room, but it's public. Isaac was the son of Abraham, and he was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel. He was also the sister of